Thank you for sharing your concerns with me today, Mr. Snow. It can be very difficult to speak out when you're feeling this way, but you should know that your honesty is really appreciated and you're doing really well. It's clear that you have a genuine desire to complete the program and you really want to make some positive changes in your life. But in order to stay on the positive journey that you started, it's really important that we resolve this issue with you not attending the counselling sessions and make a game plan for how you're going to manage this moving forward. It's clear you're feeling a bit frustrated and a bit disappointed with the process as a whole at the moment, but it's imperative for you to remember just how important these counselling sessions are. As we discussed when you first started the program, attendance at these sessions is a mandatory requirement of your rehabilitation order. That means it's important for you not only to attend the sessions, but also to participate and engage with the sessions as much as you can. Because if the review team have a reason to think that you aren't taking the program seriously, there could be some really negative outcomes for you. In that case, there is a real risk that they could recommend to the judge that you be terminated from the program. And that would see you finishing your sentence inside a prison. Considering all the hard work you've put in up until this point, that's the last thing that any of us want. I realise that the thought of going to prison is really scary, so it's important that you keep in mind the consequences I'm talking about, but it's also equally important to stay positive and focus on moving forward. So how are we going to do that? Well, what are some of the ways that we can make these sessions work for you? Well, you've identified that there's really two key issues, and that's that you aren't getting value from the sessions and that you also are having some difficulties getting to the sessions. Looking first at the counselling sessions themselves, you've indicated that you don't really feel like you're getting value from the group therapy. It's quite relaxed, perhaps a bit wishy-washy, and you're not really able to relate to what the other participants have been talking about. And that's completely understandable. It's actually common for someone who hasn't undertaken group therapy before. But what you may want to consider is this is actually all on purpose. What you may consider this kind of lack of structure or direction to the conversation may actually be the counsellor's way of easing some of the participants into the process, as opposed to just diving right in to that really kind of heavy stuff that's often spoken about in these sessions. But again, if you're still not feeling like this is going to benefit you, we could, with your permission, set up a meeting between yourself, myself and the counsellor to discuss the issues that you're having and talk about what the next steps would be to get them working for you. Turning secondly to the issue of transport. You've identified that the process of just getting to Mindspace is quite stressful. You've got a long commute at peak hour, and then you've also got the issue of your claustrophobia just adding on to all of that. So it's okay to have issues, that's not a problem, but what is important is that we find a way to either avoid these stresses or to cope with them. So one way that we could potentially combat the issue is, if you would like, I could speak to the judge and see if they would consider relocating your counselling session either to somewhere closer to you or even just somewhere along a more simple bus route for you. Alternatively, we could also speak to a judge about whether the court would approve funding for you to have some taxi fares paid for so that you could go directly to the sessions. But again, that's all up to you, and I won't mention anything if you aren't comfortable with that. So I know you were a bit hesitant to talk to me or any of the other team members about some of these problems, but as we discussed earlier, there are some really serious consequences if you don't comply with the treatment order. So if the issues with the counselling persist, you need to make sure you get in touch with either myself or another member of the team. It's normal and actually expected that you'll have some difficulties along the way, But the key thing is to make sure that you're keeping us in the loop so that we can support you. And that applies if you're unwell or if there's another reason you can't attend. It's just all about communication. And speaking of communication, we do need to discuss the issue of the incident on the train that you mentioned earlier. Now, as you're surely aware, damaging public property is an offence, and committing an offence while you're under the program may give the court the right to terminate the program. And understand that anything you've told me is in confidence, and I won't be repeating it to the judge without your permission. But that being said, whilst nobody's found out yet, now is the perfect time for you to be proactive and take responsibility for what happened. If you can get in front of a judge and be honest with the court, explain to them what has happened, you're much more likely to demonstrate to them that you are taking the program seriously and that you're making progress. I realise I've given you a lot to digest today, but the main takeaway from today is that whilst there have been a few bumps in the road, every single issue we've identified has a solution. If you choose, there are a number of ways that we can either make the sessions work better for you or just make them less stressful. At the end of the day, we are all here to support you, and we won't do or say anything that you're not comfortable with or that you don't consent to. Thank you so much for sharing with me today, Mr. Snow, and please feel free to get in contact with me if you have any other questions or need any further support.